almost always they seem to go along with me because they know I'm working hard. I have a nice high IQ. They like that, you know. We like high IQ people. But they know I make good decisions. That's why we have that Trump was right about everything, right?
The room no longer felt like a debate hall. It felt like a stage waiting for one sentence to change everything. Donald Trump sat forward with the confidence people had seen so many times before, speaking about strength, success, and intelligence. He repeated the familiar idea that he had a great brain, the best brain, a mind critics simply could not understand. Some people laughed, but the laughter felt weak because the tension in the room was growing. Across from him, Michelle Obama sat calm and still. She simply listened. Then Trump made it personal. He tossed out a dismissive comment about Michelle Obama's education, suggesting her achievements somehow deserved more questions than his own claims of greatness. The room tightened immediately. Michelle looked at him and took a slow breath. She said Trump had spent years using intelligence like a weapon, calling people weak, low IQ, and unqualified whenever they disagreed with him. Leadership, she said, was never meant to be a competition of insults. Then she asked a question nobody expected.
It is what it is.
And also blasted the president's reaction to racial strife across the nation.
As George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black Life Matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office.
She asked if he was willing to prove what he had spent years claiming. The audience became completely silent. Trump smiled at first. He looked amused, almost excited. A challenge on live television sounded like something he could easily turn into a show. He leaned back with confidence as if he had already won before it started. But Michelle did not respond the way he expected. She reached into a folder and pulled out a single card. Then she stood up, walked across the stage, and handed it to him. Suddenly, every eye in the room followed that small piece of paper. Michelle said before any discussion about intelligence,
"For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be Black. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those Black jobs?"
She asked him to read aloud the presidential oath of office. The room became incredibly quiet. Trump looked down at the card and his expression changed slightly. Then he started reading. Almost immediately, something felt uncomfortable. His pace slowed. His rhythm broke apart. He paused in strange places and repeated parts of the line. Instead of reading naturally, it looked like he was fighting with the words themselves. Nobody laughed. That mattered most. People had expected a dramatic political moment, maybe a clever trap or a sharp punchline. Instead, what unfolded felt awkward and heavier than anyone expected. It felt less like entertainment and more like watching someone suddenly lose control of a moment they thought belonged to them. Michelle's expression changed too. She had challenged the arrogance, but the result seemed different from what anyone imagined. This was not the kind of victory that creates applause or celebration. The energy that had filled the room earlier was gone. Even the cameras seemed to move more slowly, almost as if nobody wanted to interrupt the strange heaviness that had settled over everything. The man who had spent years questioning the intelligence of others was now standing beneath bright lights, struggling through words tied to the office he claimed to understand better than anyone. When he finished reading, there was no applause, only silence. Trump looked up and tried to recover the room with a smile, but the rhythm had disappeared. Everyone had already seen the contrast. One person had treated intelligence like a weapon. The other had simply asked for a demonstration. As the silence continued, it somehow felt louder than anything spoken that night. Earlier, the room had been filled with energy and confidence, but now it felt almost reflective. People were not reacting because they were thinking. The stage no longer felt like a competition between two personalities, a moment that quietly asked people what leadership was actually supposed to mean. Michelle finally spoke again. Her voice was softer now. She said leadership is not about bragging about being smart. It is about respecting responsibility. It is about understanding the promises made before a nation and carrying those promises with dignity. She said strength does not come from trying to make others appear smaller. Real strength comes from serving something larger than yourself. For many people watching at home, the moment felt larger than politics itself. The oath was never just words on paper. It was a promise. Presidents change and parties change, but that promise remains because the country is supposed to stand above any single person. That was why people remembered the moment. Not because someone shouted louder, not because someone won a debate, but because one card and a few quiet seconds reminded people that real intelligence does not need to humiliate anyone to prove itself. and leadership begins with humility.